Intro. My dear friend John Byer sent me this link to a YouTube video about the ant people. This is another incredible rabbit hole that I'm going down. Come with me on this journey. You may even learn something new and outside of your box. It may even be beyond your comfort zone. Visits to the king of ant people, an ancient moon base. Written by Dr. Michael Scala on January 14th, 2023. Poston Explorology featured. JP currently serves in the U.S. Army and recently completed a mission to an underground Florida location as part of a team of 8 covert military personnel seeking information about a sleeping giant discovered at a nearby underground facility. At the entrance to an underground city, his covert team was met by security personnel from a civilization of humanoids with distinct ant characteristics, aka ant people. JP's team was then led into the base where they eventually met with the ant people's king. After the seven other members of his team were asked to leave, JP was given a private audience with the king, who told him that their civilization was opening up to the rest of the planet and would soon be permitting more people to visit their underground facilities in Florida and elsewhere. Once his mission to the underground ant civilization was complete, JP went on another moon mission where he saw the ancient ruins of an underground city that was built by the ant people. In this episode, today's interview with Dr. Michael Scala, JP describes what the ant people intend to do shortly and why they feel it's important for them to reconnect with surface humanity and therefore us to the history of the planet. The Ant People of the Hopi by Gary A. David. The Hopi Indians have lived on the high desert of northern Arizona for thousands of years. This barren but beautiful landscape was a place where Hopi gods directed them to build a number of villages made up of pueblos, which we today would call stone apartment complexes. Here the Hopi managed to flourish by simply growing corn, beans, and squash, with very little rainfall and almost no irrigation. One of the most intriguing Hopi legends involves the Ant people, who were crucial to the survival of the Hopi, not just once, but twice. The so-called First World, or World Age, was apparently destroyed by fire, possibly some sort of volcanism, asteroid strike, or coronal mass ejection from the sun. The Second World was destroyed by ice age glaciers, or a pole shift. During these two global cataclysms, the vast, virtuous members of the Hopi tribe were guided by an odd-shaped cloud during the day and a moving star at night that led them to the sky god named Sotukan, who finally took them to the ant people in Hopi, Anu Sinon. The ant people then escorted the Hopi into subterranean caves where they found refuge and substance. In the legend, the ant people are portrayed as generous and industrious, giving the Hopi food when supplies ran short and teaching them the merits of food storage. In fact, another legend says that the reason why the ants have such thin waists today is because they once deprived themselves of provisions in order to feed the Hopi. The constellation Orion also has a thin waist. When Orion dominates the winter skies, the ants are deep in their small underground hills. These structures are similar in form to the Hopi kivas, which are subterranean communal prayer chambers. Consequently, the Sanskrit word ki means anthill and va means dwelling. Each February, inside their kivas, the Hopi perform the bean sprouting ceremony or bean dance called Panua. During this time, the fires are continuously kept ablaze, turning these structures into superb hothouses. The ritual commemorates a time when the Anu Simon taught the Hopi how to sprout beans inside caverns in order to survive. It is interesting to note that the Babylonian sky god was named Anu. The Indian word for ant is also Anu, and the Hopi root Nakai means friends. Thus, the Hopi Anunnaki, or ant friends, may have been the same as the Sumerian Anunnaki, the beings who once came to earth from the heavens. The ant people may have also lived in ancient Egypt. Akhenaten, the 11th dynasty pharaoh who ruled from 1331 to 1334 BC, is shown in some depictions with an elongated skull like the shape of an ant's head. His almond-shaped eyes and neck are like the ant, and either the serpent or the vulture on his uretratus represents the ant's mandala. He also has spirally arms and legs like those of the ant, and his upper body resembles the ant's thorax, while its lower body mirrors the ant's abdomen. Akhenaten's body type can be sophisticately compared to the pharaoh ant Mononomian Pherecydes, which originated in West Africa. It also has an elongated head, a yellow to reddish brown body, and a darker abdomen with a stinger. Perhaps it's more than coincidence that the Egyptian word Sahu, which means stars of Orion, whereas the Hopi word Sohu means star, the most important of which are those in the constellation Orion. By Gary A. David. The Truth About Aliens and Insects by Rex Burris. Earlier in the summer, our kitchen was invaded by a long column of small black Argentine ants. Their episode finally subdued, but lately a half dozen large red ants patrol the countertops. They are rather placid and freeze when they approach, as they are tame. Under the magnification of my triple 10 hand lens, I was astonished when a horrific pinter arm head came into focus. The image was perfectly alien, as if a war of the worlds monstrous creature had crawled form from a spaceship. Now we know where movies get their monsters. On Halloween, it's horrors. We are accustomed to looking at squirrels, turtles, sparrows, and animals large enough to plainly see, even if the appearance of neighborhood creatures might appear alien when compared to the human face. But the sudden enlarged engagement with insect heads, and even Microscopic oddities has a rather startling foreign flavor. If ants were as large as people, there would be panic. My son reminded me that there were gigantic insects and other arthropods in prehistoric times when nearly everything appeared huge, grotesque, and alien to Earth compared to the present. Actually, there is a legend among the Hopi Indians that during some Earth volcanic eruptions in ancient times, they were guided by strange forces to ant people living in subterranean chambers who saved them. There are also stories of Egyptian ant people with elongated skulls and spindly arms and legs said to be descended from aliens. The irony is that such strange skulls have actually been found. There is a Greek legend of a 9-foot alien that resembled an erected praying mantis. In fact, there are hundreds of Greek mythological gods, dragons, gorgons, and such listed, many having a link with alleged alien visitors to Earth who helped build the Egyptian pyramids. When it comes to human imagination, nothing is too weird to be imagined. When you don't have correct information, the sky is the limit. Look at the list of mythological monsters on Google's list of legendary creatures. Even the movies are liberally sprinkled with horror creatures, hobbit curiosities, blob monsters, and worse presenting giant killer spiders, as if real, a type of show that adds to the fear of harmless arachnids. Hot Hollywood right now is blooded zombies. Ninja mutant turtles might qualify as an alien. But turtles in general are usually loved. Halloween's a good time to be reminded of what apparitions have been appropriated from the insect world and the depths of confused minds to induce fear into people. I will admit that I've diverted from the truth of nature to dream out some far-fetched stories to tell kids. Shame on me, but kids love those trips into fantasy and seem able to sort it all out. The floating eyeball, the mole man, and the paper-faced people are some stories I have stretched. Part of that procedure is to give human personalities to things like Peter Rabbit, Reddy Fox, and cast as presented by Thornton Burgess and his Little Bedtime Stories, and from which I have borrowed Nature, Nature's Truth was the foundation for Burgess' fantasy. However, Little Red Riding Hood is a gruesome horror fairy tale vivid enough to scare a child witless, and not with much nature truth involved. You could go on to a myriad of fairy tales, quite scary to a child. Why? The three-headed Hydrus was part of the Greek garble, as was the snaky head of Medusa, and is in our modern microscopic world of freshwater hydras and planaria. Cut-off heads were soon replaced. There was some truth in that. Three-headed hydra myth, although I'm not sure if they have sufficient microscope in those days to see real hydras fully or understand their existence. Adequate options are necessary. Adequate optics are necessary for the study of underwater microorganisms. These creatures, truly creatures to be wary of, as large as men. There is some reference to gray aliens that feeds the UFO cult. Believers contend that such grays can't crawled out of a crashed spaceship during the Roswell, New Mexico incident. Just as in primitive time, when ignorance promoted belief in Greek gods, forest spirits, and dragons, the 2015 existence of space aliens is a pet theory for those inclined to slip some superstition between the gaps of the unknown and the unknown. Babies have big heads and big eyes and tiny little arms and legs. So did the aliens at Roswell. I rest my case. William Shatner. Ant people rescued Native Americans by Atala. This clip sculpture commemorates when the ant people rescued North Americans, not once, but twice. This occurred when the earth was destroyed first by fire and then by ice, and one earth world passed into another. It is told down through the generations in Native American story that the ant people took groups of virtuous humans into their underground homes and protected and taught them until the earth was safe for humans to once again walk in the sun. Hopi legend of the earth people. This story is commemorated by interdimensional artists in hundreds of feet tall ancient bas reliefs located in the Garden of the Gods, Colorado Springs, Colorado. The figures in the story are of lighter whitish stone set into the red stone around them. I have been photographing the Garden of the Gods in visits west for several decades now. Each visit permits me to go deeper into the life of the rock beings and nature spirits who live there. I have always felt that I was returning home to a place I once dearly loved and lived in. A few years ago, the nature spirits of this section of park entered into conversation with me. They uncovered my eyes and showed me more of this mural. This cliff stands in the middle of a giant, great field, and thousands of people walk beneath it every day. But very few see with subtle eyes, and so much miss the magnificent commemorative moment. On the right in the mural is the profile of an ant being with their distinctive long face. On the upper left is the image of a Native American. On the lower left is the image of a lion. The lion image is seen at several locations in this garden. To the right are two life forms admiring the mural, and the mural itself is inside life form created by the entire cliff. Over much of the face of the cliff are caves. I am told by spirit that there are cave openings to the inner earth in this area, only they exist in a different dimension and so are difficult to locate. So this is a story sculptured by beings of other dimensions, commemorating the long partnership and friendships of the ant people and the Indians who are watching each other's backs, and both are protecting the all-important animal life of Earth. Local knowledge of this monument. I was taking photos of this cliff this year when a local guide stopped to show her group the bas relief. She explained that this area is the ancient homeland of the Ute people, and still, once a year, they return for celebrations. At that time, they come to honor the Indian visage carved into the cliffs. The guide and I exchanged information. I showed her the ant person, and she showed me the special features of the teardrop falling from the Indian's eyes. She explains that when it rains, A rivet of water runs down from the eye into a cliff indent, darkening the stone and remaining long after the rain has gone. The Indian is shedding a tear for his people. It seems appropriate for the teardrop to stay a long time, in remembrance of the loss of the different earths and its life forms at the turn of an age, the entering of a new world. Here the storm clouds are gathering once again, causing their dramatic beauty over the ancient cliffs. Links to Sumeria and ancient Egypt. As a side for these interested in the long-term alternate archaeological knowledge of the Earth, Gary A. David, author of Star Shines and Earthquakes of the Desert Southwest, has found parallels between the stories of the ant people and the ancient cultures of Babylon and Egypt. In an article posted on the West Ancient Origin, David states, "It is interesting to note that the Babylonian sky god was named Anu. The Hopi word for ant is also Anu, and the Hopi word Nak means friendship. Thus, the Hopi Anunnaki, or ant friends, may have been the same as the Sumerian Anunnaki, the beings who once came to earth from the heavens." Ancient footprints, evidence of ant people of Hopi Indian lore, by Gaia Staff, October 12, 2021. Ancient footprints buried for thousands of years are revealing the true date of creation thousands of years earlier than we thought, and shaking up the conventional timeline. Could this validate Hopi stories of ancient ant-men? White Sands National Park in New Mexico today is mostly chalky white desert and sand dunes, but thousands of years ago this was a temperate zone centered around the massive Lake Otero, filled with flourishing plants, wildlife, and now we confirm humans. Ancient footprints originally discovered in 2009 have been radiocarbon dates to be from 21,000 to 23,000 years ago. Previous estimates of human habitation in this area were 13,000 to 16,000 years ago. Ancient stone tools, footprints, and rock layers are difficult, if not impossible, to date. But scientists have found seeds from ancient spiral seedgrass mingled with some footprints. These seeds were able to be carbon dated, proving humans were in the area and thriving thousands of years earlier than previously thought. Jack Carey, researcher and author of Paranormal Planet, commented on the significance of this discovery. This is a huge point to share back human migration. That means that you're going to have to rewrite everything that's associated to our science related to human migration. That is a huge problem for anthropologists and for accepted science as a whole, Carey said. As investigators into the ancient mysteries, this is one of the biggest things that we could ever discover because now we have absolute, inarguable proof that humans were there at this exact period of time. Why are investigators of ancient mysteries so excited about this find? This is the same area, the same place, and the same time that the Hopi Indians claimed that the so-called ant people took them underground during a massive global cataclysm because the world basically caught fire according to the ancient historical and traditions. And this same event, strangely enough, can be found in the book of Enoch, which describes a commentary, a cometary impact. All of this date back to this about the same time period, Gary said. And we have to remember that in Hopi language, Anu means aunt, and Nak means friend. So the word Anunnaki to the Indian means and friends. And it was these and friends who twice took them underground, the second being when the last ice age actually melted, creating a global flood that has been recorded into ancient histories worldwide. Now we have radiocarbon data proof that there was in fact human habitation in the right place at the right time to make these oral histories viable. What do we know about the area where the footprints were found? Along with these human footprints, they also discovered quite a bit of Ice Age megafauna in the form of footprints, in the form of mammoth prints, saber-toothed cats, and quite a few other animals dating to that same time period. So this was an area for those people with readily available and numerous food sources, Carey said. There was plenty of water available, and this appears to be a temperate climate zone. For many researchers into the ancient mysteries, they would tell you that ice ages are cyclical. This is one of the great secrets of the mystery schools, and there was encoded in a lot of ancient cultures. And here we have an example of a major ice age occurring and people still being able to survive in the southwest portion of the United States. That's valuable information. How did this finding affect what we thought we knew about the past, and how would it impact the study of, archaeology in the future? It's going to change a lot of the encrusted dogma that's in our established circles of academia. They're going to have to accept the fact that this migration took place. At this point, they cannot argue against it, and therefore they're going to have to rewrite a large portion what they believe to be true. And in these gaps that we are, as investigators into ancient mysteries, believe that we have the information to fill in, Carey said. Talk about culture shock. And People in Sky High Huts by Tim Golden, April 17th, 1991. Credit the New York Times Archives. This is a digitized version of an article from the Times print archive before the start of online publication in 1996. David Kobanava Yamika had left his communal hut and traveled from his village deep in the Amazon rainforest to tell of the horrors that white men were visiting upon his people. Then he saw Times Square. Man has become crazy, Davis, David, David said as he shuffled down 7th Avenue in crumbly white running shoes, looking for what had been described to him as the heart of New York. For protection, he wore a necklace of macaw feathers and hollow seeds beneath his blue worksheet. But his eyes still darted nervously to the blur of passing automobiles. New Yorkers scurried by on the sidewalk, drafting his small, stocky frame to one side and the other. They are like the ant, he announced. They start one way and turn around and go the other way. They look all the time at the ground and never see the sky. Why do they do that? In New York annuals of awestruck visitors and cultural confrontations, Devi, who doesn't really have a last name, but borrows that of his tribe, begins a new chapter. Among the Yawanapni of Brazil, part of the hemisphere's largest tribe of unacculturated Indians, he is the first to visit the United States. Reluctant traveler. As a shaman in training, a village notable, and the primary hunter-gatherer of his young family, David was not really eager to leave his home near the Demai River. He had been trying to find money for an emergency health project, planning the first Yamanani school, and hoping to spend time for some spiritual journeys. Also, he was worried about visiting a country so recently at war. Among the Yamani, war is a messy business of axes and clubs and long bamboo-tipped arrows. Years ago, an American anthropologist labeled them the fiercest people for their tendency to kill each other. But Davi, home of the few Yakanami who speaks Portuguese or any other foreign language, and there is so much for them to tell. More than 3 years ago, gold prospectors began swarming into the forest that his people have occupied for millennia, polluting their rivers with mercury, scaring off their monkeys and tapir, and carrying in deadly diseases like malaria, tuberculosis, and the common cold. Davi is planning to explain all this to the Secretary General of the United Nations and the Organization of American States, to high officials of the World Bank, and to anyone else who will listen. He will be brought to the United States for two. He was brought to the United States for 2 weeks by Indian right groups, eager to dramatize the plight of the Yamanani. Unlike most of his contemporaries, Davi, who has been saying for several years that he is about 35 years old, saw his first white man while still a boy. He has since visited Sao Paulo and even London and Oslo, where he made speeches, received awards, and heard a lot about New York. An American friend hoped to soften the shock of Manhattan by lending his Upper Side apartment and stocking the refrigerators with bananas and Chiquita Caribbean splash fruit juice. The friend would have rigged up a hammock too had the beams of the post-war building hold the screws. Anyhow, Davi arrived angry. In Rio de Janeiro, Pan American Airlines stewardess insisted that he check the bow and arrows he had carried along as a gift. At Kennedy Airport, people wearing the same uniforms gave him back only a form to report lost luggage. As might have happened with my first generation son of the earth, a note of condensation crept into Davi's voice as he rode down Broadway on the 104 bus. Everything in the world here, everything in these countries is mixed up, he said in his rough Portuguese, glaring out at 72nd Street. Nothing is separated. All the races are mixed. They don't have blood of their own. Even dogs. Another race of dogs in New York, Davi said, admitting Pekingese, whose hair he figured would substitute wonderfully for the feathers used to decorate the headdress that the Yamanaki called cocotte, a poodle minced by, tied to a man by a long rope. They have other hair, the dogs, other customs. The customs of the people seem to less strange. That man is coming from the laundromat. David's traveling companion, Claudia Andoir, explained, referring to a man with plastic bags of clothing slung over his shoulders. The party was walking back along 106th Street after a look at the Hudson. People here don't wash People here don't wash their clothes, she said. But the river is right there, David protested. He was kidding. Spiritual questions. At the Cathedral Church of St. John the Divine, though, David was vexed by the marble sarcophagus building the remains of a bishop. When the Yamagaki die, their bodies are cremated and their ashes consumed in a grog of plantain mush. The names of the dead are never spoken again, making it hard to determine just how many have been killed by the miners and their diseases. If the body is in there, Davi asked, where does his soul go? It is not that the Yamanaki have no explanation for the ways of white men. A Yamanaki myth holds that whites come into this world long ago when a fight among men, interrupted by the ritual seclusion of an Indian girl during her first menses. The forest was plunged into darkness, and a flood swept many Yakamani away. Yamori, a supernatural being, skinned up some of the forest and mumbled into his kaftans. The bits of foam then became white people, who, to the Yamanaki way of thinking, still see the same burbling noses to communicate when King Kong Chung. In the souvenir ship of the Empire State Building, Davi wondered about the monkeys depicted on the coffee cups and key rings. A friend explained that the items referred to an old movie about a giant ape that terrorized New York. The friend pointed to the posters of King Kong hugging the skyscraper's top. Does the monkey still exist? Davi wanted to know. It is not the Yamanaki way to be impressed by new things, and on leaving the building, Davi seemed nonchalant. I have been higher than that before, he confided in a taxicab that squirted down Fifth Avenue. The homes of the shrubbery, he said, using the Yamanaki word for shamans, are much higher. In the Sericacus range of northern Brazil, where many Yamakapi live, the roughly 20,000 members of the tribe are divided about equally by the Brazilian-Venezuelan border. The hills rise to more than 3,000 feet, but Davi wasn't really thinking about something else, said Miss Andujar, who is trying to have the Brazilian government declare Yamakaki lands a national park. Nothing ever surprises him because he's already experienced everything in his spiritual trip, she says, meaning the journey that Yamanaki make with the help of Yamakoma, a hallucinative that is blown into the nostrils through long tubes. By the next afternoon, at the Museum of the American Indian, Davi had become positively dialect. At one point, at one display case, he pointed to the small likeness of a shape quadrupled. That, he says, is the buffalo. His companions stared in disbelief. What, where could he have seen a buffalo? In Sao Paulo, he explained. I saw that movie, The Dance of the Wolf. In coming to the United States, the hopes of raising money for sick Yamanaki was foremost in Davi's mind. The Brazilian government that took office last year promised to evict the estimated 45,000 prospectors on Yamanaki lands and even dynamited their airstrip. But some of the miners have already returned, and their disease continued to kill Indians who have no immunity even to common colds. In the South Bronx, as he was driven through poor parts of New York on Saturday afternoon, David began to question the seriousness of things here. When I see white men like that, he said of a ragged looking man walking along Southern Boulevard in the South Bronx, I feel very sad. He has no food. He has no place of his own. David felt better when he looked down from his airplane at the green surroundings of Washington. And Dolores said, then the people in Pan American uniforms at the National Airport told him that they had lost his luggage again. Talk about culture shock and people in sky high huts by Tim Golden, April 17th, 1991. Credit the New York Times archives. This is a digitized version of an article from the Times print archive before the start of online publication in 1996. David Kobanava Yamika had left his communal hut and traveled from his village deep in the Amazon rainforest to tell of the horrors that white men were visiting upon his people. Then he saw Times Square. Man has become crazy, Davis, David, David said as he shuffled down 7th Avenue in crumbly white running shoes, looking for what had been described to him as the heart of New York. For protection, he wore a necklace of macaw feathers and hollow seeds beneath his blue worksheet. But his eyes still darted nervously to the blur of passing automobiles. New Yorkers scurried by on the sidewalk, drafting his small, stocky frame to one side and the other. They are like the ant, he announced. They start one way and turn around and go the other way. They look all the time at the ground and never see the sky. Why do they do that? In New York annuals of awestruck visitors and cultural confrontations, Devi, who doesn't really have a last name, but borrows that of his tribe, begins a new chapter. Among the Yawanapni of Brazil, part of the hemisphere's largest tribe of unacculturated Indians, he is the first to visit the United States. Reluctant traveler. As a shaman in training, a village notable, and the primary hunter-gatherer of his young family, David was not really eager to leave his home near the Demai River. He had been trying to find money for an emergency health project, planning the first Yamanani school, and hoping to spend time for some spiritual journeys. Also, he was worried about visiting a country so recently at war. Among the Yamani, war is a messy business of axes and clubs and long bamboo-tipped arrows. Years ago, an American anthropologist labeled them the fiercest people for their tendency to kill each other. But Davi, home of the few Yakanami who speaks Portuguese or any other foreign language, and there is so much for them to tell. More than 3 years ago, gold prospectors began swarming into the forest that his people have occupied for millennia, polluting their rivers with mercury, scaring off their monkeys and tapir, and carrying in deadly diseases like malaria, tuberculosis, and the common cold. Davi is planning to explain all this to the Secretary General of the United Nations and the Organization of American States, to high officials of the World Bank, and to anyone else who will listen. He will be brought to the United States for He was brought to the United States for 2 weeks by Indian right groups, eager to dramatize the plight of the Yamanani. Unlike most of his contemporaries, Davi, who has been saying for several years that he is about 35 years old, saw his first white man while still a boy. He has since visited Sao Paulo and even London and Oslo, where he made speeches, received awards, and heard a lot about New York. An American friend hoped to soften the shock of Manhattan by lending his Upper Side apartment and stocking the refrigerators with bananas and Chiquita Caribbean splash fruit juice. The friend would have rigged up a hammock too had the beams of the post-war building hold the screws. Anyhow, Davi arrived angry. In Rio de Janeiro, Pan American Airlines stewardess insisted that he check the bow and arrows he had carried along as a gift. At Kennedy Airport, people wearing the same uniforms gave him back only a form to report lost luggage. As might have happened with my first generation son of the earth, a note of condensation crept into Davi's voice as he rode down Broadway on the 104 bus. Everything in the world here, everything in these countries is mixed up, he said in his rough Portuguese, glaring out at 72nd Street. Nothing is separated. All the races are mixed. They don't have blood of their own. Even dogs. Another race of dogs in New York, Davi said, admitting a Pekingese whose hair, he figured, would substitute wonderfully for the feathers used to decorate the headdress that the Yamanaki called cocotte, a poodle minced by, tied to a man by a long rope. They have other hair, the dogs, other customs. The customs of the people seem to less strange. That man is coming from the laundromat, Davi's traveling companion, Claudia Andoir explained, referring to a man with plastic bags of clothing slung over his shoulders. The party was walking back along 106th Street after a look at the Hudson. People here don't wash their clothes, she said. But the river is right there, Davi protested. He was kidding. Spiritual questions. At the Cathedral Church of St. John the Divine, though, Davi was vexed by the marble sarcophagus building the remains of a bishop. When the Yamagaki die, their bodies are cremated and their ashes consumed in a grog of plantain mush. The names of the dead are never spoken again, making it hard to determine just how many have been killed by the miners and their diseases. If the body is in there, Davi asks, where does his soul go? It is not that the Yamanaki have no explanation for the ways of white men. A Yamanaki myth holds that whites come into this world long ago when a fight among men interrupted by the ritual seclusion of an Indian girl during her first menses. The forest was plunged into darkness, and a flood swept many Yakamani away. Yamori, a supernatural being, skinned up some of the forest and mumbled into his kaftans. The bits of foam then became white people, who, to the Yamanaki way of thinking, still see the same burbling noses to communicate when King Kong Chung. In the souvenir ship of the Empire State Building, Davi wondered about the monkeys depicted on the coffee cups and key rings. A friend explained that the items referred to an old movie about a giant ape that terrorized New York. The friend pointed to the posters of King Kong hugging the skyscraper's top. Does the monkey still exist? Davi wanted to know. It is not the Yamanaki way to be impressed by new things, and on leaving the building, Davi seemed nonchalant. I have been higher than that before, he confided in a taxicab that squirted down Fifth Avenue. The homes of the shrubbery, he said, using the Yamanaki word for shamans, are much higher. In the Sericacus range of northern Brazil, where many Yamakapi live, the roughly 20,000 members of the tribe are divided about equally by the Brazilian-Venezuelan border. The hills rise to more than 3,000 feet, but Davi wasn't really thinking about something else, said Miss Andujar, who is trying to have the Brazilian government declare Yamakaki lands a national park. Nothing ever surprises him because he's already experienced everything in his spiritual trip, she says, meaning the journey that Yamanaki make with the help of Yamakoma, a hallucinative that is blown into the nostrils through long tubes. By the next afternoon, at the Museum of the American Indian, Davi had become positively dialect. At one point, at one display case, he pointed to the small likeness of a shape quadrupled. That, he says, is the buffalo. His companions stared in disbelief. What, where could he have seen a buffalo? In Sao Paulo, he explained. I saw that movie, The Dance of the Wolf. In coming to the United States, the hopes of raising money for sick Yamanaki was foremost in Davi's mind. The Brazilian government that took office last year promised to evict the estimated 45,000 prospectors on Yamanaki lands and even dynamited their airstrip. But some of the miners have already returned, and their disease continued to kill Indians who have no immunity even to common colds. In the South Bronx, as he was driven through poor parts of New York on Saturday afternoon, Davi began to question the suburbiousness of things here. When I see white men like that, he said of a ragged looking man walking along Southern Boulevard in the South Bronx, I feel very sad. He has no food. He has no place of his own. Davi felt better when he looked down from his airplane at the green surroundings of Washington. And Dolores said, then the people in Pan American uniforms at the national airport told him that they had lost his luggage again. Visits to the King of Ant People and Ancient Moon Base. Written by Dr. Michael Scala on January 14th, 2023. Poston Explorology featured. JP currently serves in the U.S. Army and recently completed a mission to an underground Florida location as part of a team of 8 covert military personnel seeking information about a sleeping giant discovered at a nearby underground facility. At the entrance to an underground city, his covert team was met by security personnel from a civilization of humanoids with distinct ant characteristics, aka ant people. JP's team was then led into the base where they eventually met with the ant people's king. After the 7 other members of his team were asked to leave, JP was given a private audience with the king, who told him that their civilization was opening up to the rest of the planet and would soon be permitting more people to visit their underground facilities in Florida and elsewhere. Once his mission to the underground ant civilization was complete, JP went on another moon mission where he saw the ancient ruins of an underground city that was built by the ant people. In this episode, today's interview with Dr. Michael Scala, JP describes what the ant people intend to do shortly and why they feel it's important for them to reconnect with surface humanity and therefore us to the history of the planet. JP, Mission to Underground Civilization and Nordic Spaceport. Written by Dr. Michael Sala on February 20th, 2023. On February 8th, JP was part of a 10-man mission to an underground civilization in Florida that was led by one of its inhabitants, a 7-foot tall blonde human called Josette. JP witnessed an underground city belonging to the civilization, but his team was handed off by Josette to Nordic extraterrestrials who have a large spaceport next to the city. JP was told that the Nordics have been helping the civilization along with many other underground and underwater cities deal with Earth contingencies for a long time. In his update, JP revealed seeing hundreds of spacecraft which are ready to begin flying into Earth skies as part of an agreement with the Earth Alliance comprising major spacefaring nations to wake up surface humanity in a gradual but methodical way. JP reveals how similar situations are unfolding in different nations with their own underground civilizations, coordinating with the Earth Alliance, and details of different pro and anti disclosure factions. The Hopi prophecies are coming true. Here's why we should pay attention. By Cyril Christo, August 4th, 2021. In 1990, I had the extraordinary opportunity to visit the home of Martin Gazwama and Thomas Banyaka, Hopi elders in Hotevita, the last traditional village on the Hopi mesas in the midst of the seemingly dry and vast Arizona desert. To Western eyes, this almost inhospitable land is where one nation, the Hopi, have thrived without warfare for over 1,000 years. There's a sense of profound freedom, clear and stark as the distant horizon. The Hopis are the preeminent dry farmers on earth. When they speak about the elemental realities, it is in the order of revelation. Thomas shared the vision of the now famous Hopi prophecies that describe this time of Powhatan, a purification of social and ecological disruption that will eventually bring a time of lasting peace over the world's people. But before that, we'll have to go through the eye of the storm. When I first heard Thomas's words, I received them mainly as stories, warnings about Western man's way of life that was out of balance with the Creator's law, a law that was once the very basics of our own Declaration of Independence. An, an indigenous group had disappeared every year since 1900. What unique and immemorial relationship with existence has humanity expunged in the name of progress? The answers are starting to haunt civilization in ways we cannot measure. The Hopi had been trying to get their message to the United Nations for years. They would succeed in addressing the General Assembly, but their voice would fall on deaf ears. Thomas raised his arms as if brandishing an imaginary sword, the potential sword of nuclear annihilation, the nuclear sword of Damocles that hangs over all the civilization and the planet. The Hopi had suffered mercilessly at the hands of the U.S. government. In 1906, they were even starved, so the outside traditionals would sign a contract with Washington, D.C., all in clear violation of what would later become the Genocide Convention Implementation Act. They have been put in jails without trial, in Alcatraz, had children kidnapped and put in American schools like so many indigenous tribes around the world. Forced accumulation all over the planet has deprived native people of their land, language, and very being. Immeasurable wisdom carried on for generations, knowledge of the land that the dominant society needs to turn on to this of unprecedented climate change. It may save civilization as we know it. Indeed, it was the Hopi who warned the world of the world-shaking events of which World War I and World War II were the first. Have we begun the period of the third and final world-shattering event, the separation from nature? The elders believe that the U.S. government continues to impose its jurisdiction and its way of life. Not only will traditional Hopi way of life and a convent with a curator be compromised, but mankind's very survival will be jeopardized. Mining a black mesa just north of the Hopi reservation has extracted much of the uranium that was used to fuel U.S. ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles, during the Cold War. Hopi elders knew that the coal and uranium, if extracted, would upset the balance of the earth. Draining the aquifer used for mining affected the rotation of the earth. Is the unexplorable drought out west partly due to the drying up of this vast underground body of water? The drought of 1990 was the worst in memory, so much so that the Hopis did not bother to plant corn, their staple crop. At the time when deserts and floods and fires are spreading all over the world, it is worth paying attention to the teachings of Earth's preeminent dry farmers. Caretaking is the center of Native people's concerns for millennia. They hold the universe in their hands, as the elders explain. But today, they have lost the power to fulfill their true role. Natives' title to land were based, according to Hopi, on caretaking. Their home was not based on conquest, and they knew that any empire built on conquest must inevitably crumble. This is what we are seeing today. True title was implanted by the force that gives life. As we give, as we can plenty see today, America and the world are reaping the results of conquest, extraction, and subjugation of the land, its first people, and other species on whom we depend for our survival. The results we played out in our lifetime in a world where rulership can be seized by the strongest army, fulfillment of our truth as caretakers requires that we learn how to place wisdom in power. A speaker for the Hopi has said, Hopi are perhaps the only tribe never to have signed a treaty with the dominant power, the U.S. The very coal that lie underneath Hopi and Navajo land was being dug up. How many people in our crowded cities realize that much of their electricity and economic ventures depending on the exhaustion of finite resources that were held together by an incessantly tenuous ecological web? Now, with the heat done over the West and the pandemic, many more are about to find out. The very economical structure of our time was based on commercial dominion over Aboriginal people all over the globe. The tens of billions of gallons of water used to slurry coal came from the Navajo aquifer. The Agua aquifer is not far away, stretching from New Mexico all the way to South Dakota, but it also been drying up with imponderable repercussions for the future of agriculture and the entire breadbasket of America. How long will it be before America has famines? Another dust bowl. The Hopi prophecies state that we are about to enter the fifth world, the time of plenty, when there was enough food and water and resources for everyone, is coming to an end, precisely because governments around the world have abrogated native title. The devastation unfolding could be uncalculable. Few elders will be left to teach anyone how to talk with the clouds or what it means in terms of geophysics and the earth climate ahead. When I first heard about the prophecies face to face with the elders who were trying to get the world to listen, I was floored. I was told people on the coast will have to move inland. I could not fathom the full extent of what they were saying. Their thoughts were clairvoyant, and their prophecies are manifesting worldwide. Many people come to the Southwest. Some live in fine houses. Immigrants from other states who don't fully understand what the land has to teach. Many decide to build their dream house with no understanding of the water tables or reservoirs. They may live in fancy houses and drive the newest cars, but in a very crucial way, they have only seen the surface of the implicate order and not lifted the hood of what the land and its first people have to tell them. Today, many elders are dying due to the virus. Languages are fading away, and with them, knowledge, or rather, a far reaching wisdom about how the world actually works that is far more radical than what science understands and what the dominant society is trying to find out with the search for the most minute particles and black holes. Native elders will ask, how will that knowledge of quantum mechanics serve us when we don't even know how to live? There was a time when NASA scientists were asking Hopi elders about what they could share about the Earth changes. Now we know they are happening, and there's precisely nothing we'll be able to do except go through the storm. Civilization has unleashed the monster beyond the wildest dreams of Dr. Frankenstein. The prophecies are daunting. They are not mystical and numinous. They are about an opening of an entirely novel order of being and relationship to the planet. An ancient metaphysics with a clear plumb line to the soil was being desacralized when Arizona Public Services imposed water, sewer, and electrical lines on the people who wished to maintain their sovereignty and who had no desire to pay taxes or become federal subjects, and we all have become an entirely way of living entrenched in the order of our coherence our mechanical world cannot fathom was coming unglued. The entire life force on Earth was now in question. Today, forces are being unleashed that will challenge the very foundations of society. The Hopi somehow foresaw the talking cobwebs and flying villages, and even the house of Mika, the UN, generations before these things came into being. Knowledge that issues from a time before the computer and pollution that is killing clarity and life itself. I thought of the strength of the traditional elders years ago who were able to run dozens of miles a day, much like the Tarahumara of Copper Canyon in northern Mexico. I thought of the presidents that came before computer models that so much of our society is beholden to. I thought of the crops the Hopis grew in near impossible conditions, thanks to their prayers and songs. Science can dismiss these prophecies as mere superstition, as more coincidence that cannot be proved or disproved. But in the Hopi, the psychic pattern of the mind lies, connected to its counterparts, the event of the worlds that unfold in the physical world. The last time I saw the Hopi Mesa, I felt an ancient metaphysic ebbing in the global drain. No discoveries by nuclear researchers at the CERN facility could match the intricate mindfulness of the elders. We face a more radical change in civilization than has ever occurred in the human time frame. The elders have warned us that the dominant society, so very bent on subjugation and extraction of resources, has stirred the underground serpent, which is bound to wreak future military and ecological havoc. Already the signs are here. We need to strengthen ourselves by running and taking cold baths, say the elders. When the heat of the world now upon us, that will be a welcome reprise for what they have unleashed on the world. Traditional elders have been locked in battle with progressives for decades now. Progressives who subscribe to the police state and the coal mines and the machinations of the dominant society. The traditional elders emphasize that the contest today is between those who prescribe to such prejudice and those who recognize the human family as a balancing influence within nature. If the mentality that rules the modern world wins, and the true characters of the land and life lose changes of their trust, the human sojourn in this world will come to a painful conclusion, along with almost every other life form. But the wisdom of the ancient world prevails. Our peaceful tenure could last indefinitely. It is time humanity chooses either the path of annihilation or the path of everlasting life. Not long ago, David Kubinika, an elder of the Yamakaki of the Amazon, whose people have suffered invasions of their land, killings by foreign gold miners, and unprecedented fire, told the world, whatever is happening to us will happen to you. Listening, respecting, and acting on the wisdom of the first people of the world may say civilization, that elders have been right all along. The emergency is here. It has arrived. The time to act is now.
Kingman, Arizona, May 1953. At the height of the Cold War, an unidentified object reportedly crashed in the desert sands. What remained was allegedly sent to America's most top-secret facility, Area 51. But it wasn't until 45 years later, in 1998, that a retired military engineer named Bill Uhouse came forward to make a stunning claim. The military didn't just have the extraterrestrial technology, they had an actual living alien.
Uhouse claimed that he worked at a secret laboratory, supposedly in the Papoose Mountains of Area 51 in Nevada, and that since 1953, the American government had an insectoid alien that was working with them. His name was J-Rod.
J-Rod supposedly assisted the military in understanding and duplicating the incredible power systems and futuristic technology that was combined and created for the Kingman craft.
Shortly after Bill Uhouse broke the story, microbiologist Dan Burish came forward to confirm his claim. But according to Dan Burish, J-Rod claimed that he was not an alien. What he revealed was something even more shocking.
This insectoid alien, J-Rod, said that he had actually come from our future, and that at some time in the near future to us, there is a catastrophe on this planet, and much of mankind is destroyed, and that mankind splits into two different species. And one of these species goes and lives underground. And while underground, they develop these insectoid traits, which is exactly what the Hopi and Zuni and even Navajo legends say, that during the transition period between the third and the fourth worlds, this above world of today was not habitable, and they had to go underground and live for some time with what they called the ant people. And you have to wonder if perhaps J-Rod is actually an insectoid human being from our own future.
Could the accounts of J-Rod confirm that the Hopi stories of ant people were more than just mythology? And if the so-called insectoids really do exist, is it possible that they are not aliens, but humans from the future? According to ancient astronaut theorists, not only are aliens watching over North America today, but in fact, they have been visiting us for hundreds and possibly even thousands of years. And they claim the evidence can be found in the strange sites, structures, and monuments that lie in every corner of the continent. Serpent Mound in Adams County, Ohio. The Kivas at Chaco Canyon, New Mexico. Bighorn Medicine Wheel in Wyoming. Many Native American tribes say that at these ancient sites and countless others, entities that they call star beings came down from the sky to teach their ancestors.
To the Zuni people and other tribes, there's a spiritual connection with the star beings. They're the ones that actually rule the universe or the world that we're on. If you look at the petroglyphs, there's a lot of references to those type of entities.
According to tribes like the Zuni and Hopi, stories of these otherworldly visitations exist not only in the oral traditions passed down from their ancestors, but also in petroglyphs carved into rock all across America. On the Zuni Pueblo in New Mexico, there are literally thousands of ancient carvings that most outsiders have never laid eyes on. And the Zuni claim that some of these petroglyphs depict visitations from star beings.
There is definitely evidence that aliens visited North America in a distant past, and there are petroglyphs throughout this part of the country carved by ancient Americans that depict just that. What can you tell me about this petroglyph right here?
You know, if you can see on top of it where maybe a head would be, it's kind of eroded off. But on the next part of it, there's 4 compartments, look like extension of something sticking out.
Yeah, almost like legs.
It could be something that they saw in the air.
Isn't there a legend that beings visited on top of this mountain?
Oh yes, on all of the mesas.
In conjunction with all the stories of star people descending from the sky in fiery shields and things like this, when I see a pattern like that, I always think, what if this is something that they saw and then they carved onto a rock?
And a lot of these are sacred drawings. They're just not graffiti like a lot of people say they are.
No, never.
There's no such thing as that in those days. Look at that triangle up there.
And you've got the dots around it that have been carved into the rock. They remind me like stars.
Could the ancient people in this part of America really have been trying to depict encounters with alien spacecraft?
There are legends and myths all around the world that can be interpreted as having been visits by extraterrestrials, and many think that such stories don't exist here in the United States. But the fact is that there are things in this country that nobody's even dreamed of.
We have on a boulder of rocks not far from our house, on it is a diagram. It's called prophecy, so we call it Prophecy Rock. And it depicts emergence of Hopi from the third world. So we went through three worlds. This is the fourth one. And it is standing at the edge. We are standing at the edge of the fourth world, caused by the fact that we are now all traveling, not all, but the predominant population of races have embraced a materialistic path that has no heart. It's science and technology, and we are abandoning the spiritual path, which is the path of a person, of a farmer that we met, our ancestors met when they came from the third to the fourth world. His name was Ma'asau. You know, he is the guardian of the land, caretaker of Mother Earth. And on that prophecy rock, the material path ends abruptly. The spiritual path just keeps going. At the beginning of the fourth world, there's a picture of Masa. And he is also standing at the end, basically meaning I am the first and I am the last. See, and he's still holding on to his corner. See, so there's hope. On Maasau's path, there's also 3 circles. 2 are complete. First, the third one is halfway complete. They represent World War I, II, and the present world that we're now engaged in. So Maasau's path is now being disrupted by warfare that's going on, and now by global warming. You know, that we, mankind, are creating. But in my belief, and I go back to water again, I believe the path of science, technology can still be intertwined with the mystical path, the spiritual path, mythical path. I think they can be intertwined as they were intertwined from the beginning when science and mythology was intertwined. Then they separated. Now I think through water is the bridge that will bring us back together again. And I see a lot of hope in that, because we went through various stages of science, and now we have already going into another paradigm called quantum mechanics, quantum physics. That is what Hopi always taught. We are part of the hydraulic cycle. We are intertwined with nature. We are not separated. We are connected to every living thing, not just here on the planet, earthly planet, but down the bottom of the oceans, the cosmos, the universe. And we're connected to the continents and the islands through water, through the ocean. And then the sixth direction is the upper world, the cosmos, sea, the home of the cloud people. And that's where you go when your physical body dies here on earth. Then the liquid inside your body evaporates and it ascends to the cloud people. Okay? And there we rest and we come back as rain, as snow, bringing water to nature, all types of animals and insects and living things. We replenish the lakes, the aquifers. We're on our journey back home to the sea. When we reach the sea, we then come back as rain, as clouds. And we keep repeating that cloud cycle. It never ends. It's eternal because water is one element that's indestructible. It cannot be destroyed. It is a living spirit. It is our connection to the Creator, the Great Spirit. And so we are part of the hydraulic cycle, unlike Western science that says we're separated. And Hopi say, no, we are a very important part of that cycle. We are told to put our hearts, our minds together, and then pray for rain. And our prayers will vibrate. And the cloud people will hear it. And they'll come in gladness to bring water to our fields. So we do it through prayer. Been doing this for thousands of years. We believe water reacts to our energy, to our emotions, to our prayers. That's a fundamental Hopi belief. That water is sacred, it is spiritual, it is powerful. And we've been surviving like this as a civilization for a long, long time. There's got to be a paradigm shift based on what we learned from Dr. Imuro and other scientists that are now exploring this whole mystery of water, So I think I'm hopeful. I'm one of those people that said, I think there's hope because we have these abilities, this power gifted to us by the Creator. And we need to use that, but use it in a right way. See, in a right way to sustain life, to bring harmony back to earth, to bring holiness back to earth, which is, I believe, the mission of mankind. But we're not using it that way. We're letting science and technology take control of our lives. We worship technology and science. The creator is, we don't need the creator anymore or the spirit anymore, you know. And that to me is where our society is still heading. And if we don't do something about it, together as one race, we've got to bring our hearts and minds together, and our intent of sending out our energies. You know, the intent would be to bring harmony, love back to earth. That should be the intent.
It never fails. Every time I start to record, it starts raining. Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome back to Trippy Commentaries. Thanks for checking out the episode. I'm RJ. We're going to get right into it. Today we're in Big Valley. This is where you can find 4 hidden drawings that depict some sort of Native American and alien contact. Well, I'm going to show you the real-world drawing that looks nearly identical to this one right here. It turns out that there might be something extremely trippy going on here in Big Valley. Do me a favor, hit the like button. I also want to let you know we're going to have a live stream later on tonight. So if you hit the notification bell, with all notifications on, it'll let you know as soon as we go live. We will look at all 4 in this episode, but get a closer look at the first. You can see a crescent moon. There's some people down here, almost like tiny people. Ant people, and then a mysterious creature. I don't know what's going on right here. So we can find a real-world drawing that looks almost identical to this one right here, telling us what's really going on in Big Valley. I will go to this website so you don't have to. These ads are out of control. So Mike Gardner sent me this article, Hopi Ant People, Hopi Aliens, and Flying Saucers? Question mark. So we're going to scroll down. I mean, it has some really interesting stuff that I'm going to show you. But if you look at the picture right here, that is a Hopi drawing depicting ant people. And you could tell it's exactly what we just looked at. So Rockstar took this image as inspiration. So we might have a Hopi ant people legend in Red Dead Redemption 2. So let's scroll up. It says they built many advanced cities, an elaborate road system, practiced astronomy similar to the Maya, and totally vanished as a civilization in the 13th century. Their surviving descendants are believed to be the Pueblo people, in particular, the Hopi. The Hopi have some pretty fascinating legends. One legend speaks of ant people who helped the Hopi survive many of the hardships thrown at them. Pretty crazy, guys. We're going to take more of an in-depth look at apparently the ant people, but let's look at another drawing, the second drawing first, to see if it actually is the ant people who are represented within Red Dead Redemption 2. Here we are at the second drawing, not too far away from the first one, and right off the bat, I'm noticing the same exact moon. It's got the crescent moon. Looks like there's tiny people underneath. So I thought that was a giant. Instead, it might be like a normal-sized alien. And then ant people, tiny people underneath them, definitely depicting the ant people once again. So you got the first 2. We got 2 more to look at. Let's go back to the article. This is definitely showing off ant people. Are they still in the game? Where are they? They're going to be pretty tough to find. Here's the paragraph on the ant people. You know this is going to be good. The Hopi creation myth describes a global cataclysm, the end of the 3rd age that brought us into the current 4th age. Members of the Hopi tribe were led by an odd-shaped cloud by day and a moving star by night. Sounds amazingly similar to the cloud that led the ancient Israelites during their 40-year sojourn of Exodus. Wow. This celestial beacon took them to the sky god, Sutakang, probably butchering that one, leader of the sky people and nephew of the creator god Massaw. Sutakang hooked up with the ant people, or hooked them up with the ant people. He led them to a big mound where the ant people lived, stamped on the roof, and commanded the ant people to open their home. When an opening was made on the top of the ant hill, he said to the people, "Now you will enter this ant kiva, where you'll be safe when I destroy the world." Who comes up with this stuff? Let's scroll down. The Hopi called these creatures Anusinam, ant people. The Hopi word for ant. Okay, interesting. The ant people led the Hopi into caves, where they found refuge and food. There is a cave nearby, right inside Mount Shan. When the Hopi food supplies ran short, the ant people taught them methods of food preservation and storage and shared their own food with the primitive wards. Interesting. This happened as per legend, not just once, but twice. You can see this is pretty much very close to what we're looking at in Red Dead. At the ending of the first world, which was destroyed by fire, and second, which was destroyed by ice. Kind of lines up to like ancient dinosaur stories and whatnot. There are still cave drawings and petroglyphs depicting these ant people of Hopi legend, which of course we have in the game. They bear some resemblance to what we today refer as the gray aliens. Some theorists also claim a resemblance to the hypothesized reptilian race. So we go from ant people to aliens real fast. Let's take a look at the third drawing. Here's the next one. Again, not too far away from the first two. The last one's a little bit further away, but they're definitely associated with one another. So let's get a closer look. Another half moon. Now I thought that this might be an alien, but upon further examination, I'm not too sure. Looks like they might have Wolverine claws, Lady D, lines coming out of their head. I don't know if that's like energy, excitement. Maybe they're just completely mind blown by the moon. And I think this might be a UFO, kind of similar to the same UFOs that we see in the game. So they're not ant people. It might be an alien, it might be Native Americans. But again, you could tell it's almost telling a story with all four drawings. We got one more article to look at before we hit up the final hidden drawing in the game. Here's the article. I'll put a link in the description. What is that? Is he eating a corn dog? I'll also show you a clip from Ancient Aliens. Even they covered the Hopi ant people alien mystery. So here it says the Hopi Indians have lived on the high desert of northern Arizona for thousands of years. The barren but beautiful landscape was the place where Hopi gods directed them to build a number of villages made up of pueblos. Now I have visited some Hopi ruins in the past. It's really cool to see it here in Red Dead Redemption 2. One of the most intriguing Hopi legends involves the ant people, who were crucial to the survival of the Hopi, not just once but twice. The so-called First World was apparently destroyed by fire, possibly some sort of volcanism, and I think that Mount Shan is a volcano, or at least it used to be in the past. Asteroid strike, we know about that in the game, or coronal mass injection or ejection from the sun. Wow. The Second World was destroyed by ice age glaciers, or pole shift. During these two global cataclysms, the virtuous members of the Hopi tribe were guided by an odd-shaped cloud. Of course, we saw that. Definitely has something to do with the aliens and the drawings in the game. So not only just the one time, but twice, the ant people saved the Hopi. So no wonder, why they're depicting all this in the drawings. Maybe we'll have another cataclysm in Red Dead Redemption 2. So hopefully the ant people can save us.
In the Hopi legend, it is said that the Star Children will prepare humankind for the arrival of what they call the Blue Star.
When the Blue Star comes, it will crash to the Earth,
leading some ancient astronaut theorists to suggest that this prophecy is a reference to the impending arrival of extraterrestrial life.
The truth will be revealed to the masses in one instant for everyone to see.
Here's the location of the final hidden rock, probably the hardest one to find, right here above Lake Owanjila. So again, you can see tiny people. This one solves it. I feel like this one confirms that it is the ant people that are in the hidden drawings. Again, you got the moon, the half moon, some sort of alien-like creature. Is it an alien? Is it just a normal-sized Native American with the tiny people? Of course, the Hopi legend does talk about aliens. We got the UFO right above Mount Shan. So it seems like all this stuff is happening again. Why is Rockstar representing the ant people legend? A pretty big mystery. within Red Dead Redemption 2. It is pretty freaking cool. I love that Rockstar puts this stuff in here, and we actually were the first ones to find this. With the help of our friend Capinology, we reported on the locations of these hidden drawings before anybody. And just now, like 2 years later, we were finding out that it is the Hopi Indians and an ant people mystery that it's telling us about. Maybe there's more to the story. Let me know what you guys think. I really hope you enjoyed the episode. Once again, huge shout out to Mike Gardner for giving me the information. We're going to have a big live stream later on tonight. And as always, my friends, we're going to try to blow up the rock. Make sure to stay trippy. Maybe light it on fire? Y'all come back now, you hear?
Closing. As I said many times before, we see only 1% of the light spectrum. Unfortunately, we think we see it all. I hope this book challenged you on your belief systems. At times, humanity thinks we're the only beings in the universe. In my mind, that is extremely limited thinking. According to astronomers, billions of planets can support life. We are never alone, yet we think we are. You are the universe. You just don't know it.